I have to say I'm feeling quite a fraud really, because my role at Friends of the Castle Green in Hereford is has to be making things happen really. It's been involved in sort of managing a project. So my background is that I was a manager in the Primary Care Trust and took redundancy and then volunteer a lot of time to the Friends of Castle Green, which is a big, does anyone know Hereford? There's a big park, it's the city park right in the middle of Hereford, and we have a community building on it which used to be a council training centre, and the council have handed it over to the community. The asset transfer is going through, which is fantastic for us. So roles all had to change, so I'm now a director for community engagement. So my role is about facilitating things. At the moment what we need to do is get lots of people to use the building. It's a fantastic old Regency building, so it's going to be a massive application we're going to have to put in to get it restored. But meanwhile, on the Castle Green, we had a summer fair, a winter fair, a Shakespeare in the summer, and that was it. So as a result of taking over this building, we've now got masses of things going on. And one of the groups who wanted to rent space was a young theatre company called Young Bloods. And so they came to talk to me, and I know the guy who was kind of putting them together, their director. I think everybody in Hereford knows everybody, it's that sort of place. And they were young people who'd never performed anything, and they wanted to put on a play about the Canary girls. And I knew nothing about the Canary girls. I didn't even know that Rotherwas Munitions Factory existed. I didn't know it was there, I'd never walked over there. The only reason I went to Rotherwas because the council tip's based there. It's a big industrial site. So that was my only... So I'd heard a bit about it and was, as you would be, really interested, really kind of, oh my God, you know, this is local. It's only a walk over the river to Rotherwas from where I live. So I went to have a look, and on the site, did anyone see Kate Adie's programme about women? She was at Rotherwas. So on the, it's a huge site. I mean, it was something like 500 acres, and there's a main road that runs through it, and there's the north side of the factory and the south side. And a lot of it's still there. So you can walk around what was an old storage building, and you stand in it. This building's an acre, and it's just vast. And kids have learnt to skateboard in there and learnt their graffiti art in there. But you stand in it, and there are marks on the concrete where the women banged the shells. And if you shut your eyes, you can smell it and feel it. And I just got really involved in thinking about this project. And they needed money, this theatre company. They needed it quite badly. And so we put this bid together. And then that involved, it's just gone on and on, really. It's grown. So I've been part of a project of going to the Imperial War Museum to find out recipes, which then we came back and have done loads of baking. We had a community baking day. So people came and made disgusting kind of mutton pies and barley bread and horrible parkin that was so disgusting. People said, this is why we won the war, because they threw this at the Germans. So we had lots of costumes made, and the young people in the Young Bloods Theatre Company came to our summer fair and did some of the, did little clips for us. So they demonstrated the stemming, which they had made lots of big shell cases, and the women had to, with their thumbs, push down the explosive. You might all know this, but they reacted, made the biggest explosion if they were really packed down. And so they had to use their bare thumbs, and then they showed how there was a local court case. Some women had brought in a stick because it just took the skin completely off their thumbs. They'd brought in a stick, and this young woman had been in court and fined her week's wages. I think apparently if you did lots of overtime, you got £5 a week, which I think was a huge amount of money at the time for a week's wages. But she lost her entire week's money. And so they just showed little clips. They showed how some of the girls who'd come down from Lancashire wore clogs and entertained people by dancing on the tables. They showed the kind of community spirit for these women of being there, as well as the hideousness of it all. It was then put on in the courtyard, a big theatre in Hereford, our only theatre really. It was put on there, and we put on an exhibition at the same time, because running along this, I enabled, through the funding we got, some local history groups to start finding out more about people's stories, which has been fantastic. So the record office in Hereford, which has been shut, we paid them and asked one of the archivists to come along every evening, which he did once a week for about 8 weeks, with a group of local people who've been looking up stories. So we could start to put together an exhibition. This exhibition is growing and will then be part of a much bigger exhibition, which will then be, I mean, our project finishes this September. So we've got Hereford Hysterical Day, local people call it, Hereford Historical Day, which is also on the Castle Green, and the bigger exhibition will be part of that. The last bit of work we've been just doing recently that I've been having to do, I mean, most of this is about enabling other people, but we've had a project going in a local high school with 2 Year 10 history groups, and part of their Year 11 work is about women in war. So I've got the Canary girls to come back and do some of their play, and the work that the young people are doing. I think, like you said, it's about the stories people will have, and what will carry on for years after is that these young people could not imagine, don't know anybody who was in the First World War, and so they were really interested. So they're putting together, they did little bits of the play, they've put together a whole question and answer sheet, and that'll be some work that will go on their website. And I actually had to stand and film it because the company we'd employed to film it were away and hadn't got back in time, so I had to stand with an iPad the whole time this was on. So now hopefully it will get edited because my filming skills are not good enough to do that. The other bit which has been really exciting, which I've been doing, is talking to people actually who remember the site in the Second World War. Because when we had the play in the courtyard, we had a book for people to write in. And then we've been able to follow up all their stories. But of course, they're not alive. They're people telling stories about other people's stories. But the people who are alive, there's a lovely lady in Hereford called Nancy Evans, who I've been going over and talking to, and I'm now filming her. She's fascinated by the iPad, so we sit and we're getting somewhere, but it's going to take a little while. And she just talks. She can remember the letter coming that said where she had to go, what her parents said at the time, what they were having for tea. She can tell you the names of all the people who inspected her, who, you know, what happened with the... I mean, she says, or she believes, that she's still alive because of all the chemicals in the factory, that she's so kind of, you know, active because of them. She's adamant that's why she's still alive. But and it's great to actually talk to somebody. I mean, she was there in the Second World War. She then went back. She said, yeah, they were told they could go on holiday when the men came back. And then she worked there during the 50s, making gas masks for the Korean War. And just talks. So it's quite a big project, that, which I'm involved in. But so we've been working with, there's Herefordshire Law, there's the local history group. We've just got this book being given to us, which is fantastic, which is from Dindor Heritage Group, which is the nearest village to Roswell, to the big estate. And they've put this together from lots of people's stories. And the historian we work with, called Julie Orton-Davis, has got a chapter in here. So she's really pleased that because of us asking her to do her bit of work, she's gone on and done more work. She was really interested in the policing. I think there was a women's voluntary police. So there were 4,000 women in 1916 in this factory in Hereford who all, every now and then had a night off. I mean, and I think suddenly the women of, you know, the volunteers in Herefordshire were either kind of trying to police these women, herding them round, and they were all in lodgings, I think, as well in Hereford, so how that all worked. And they also had women trying to persuade them to do worthy things, you know, to come to kind of plays of an evening. And you just can't, you know, it's a big middle bit of the city. You think, what went on? God knows. But, and also the other football team, apparently the munitions factory football team in Hereford was became quite well known. They did quite well. So she's carrying on from that bit of work, and having got her chapter in this book, she's carrying on to look at those two things, and is following a lady called Gabrielle West, who was one of the police women, and has got her story in here. So I'm afraid I haven't got slides, but I thought I'll bring the book because I can carry it in my bag this morning. And her chapter in here is lovely, if anybody wants to see it with some pictures. So the project will just, it will end this September. It's been an absolute delight for me to not know anything about it at all, to have got involved, to worked with so many local people who all now know about each other. And yeah, it's been great. So I feel a bit of a fraud really, because it's not a huge kind of passion of mine and never was in the first place, but it's something I've become to find out about. But I think when September comes, I will go, phew, phew, before I volunteer for anything else. And now we're on to our next application, you can imagine, which is all more about food. So yeah, so I brought the book if anybody is interested in having a look at Julie's chapter with her illustration.